Boom. Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday morning. Jonathan Turner, Nathan Wenger, and John Natale here on Inside the Game. It is Tuesday. It is tax day. I'm sure that makes everybody feel all nice and warm and fuzzy on the inside, maybe even on the outside. I'm not sure. But either way, we're happy to have you along wherever you're listening or watching on YouTube, Roku, Twitter, and Facebook. So there you go. All four of those platforms. Either way, how is everyone doing this fine Tuesday morning?
John, take it away.
Oh, all right. Well, it's happy to see that Indiana is 2-1 over Michigan today, even though I guess Nate's kind of Michigan or more Michigan, but representing the Boilermakers on there. That's a good thing. So Indiana 2, Michigan 1 to start off this Tuesday morning. We're good. We are tomorrow. Indy 11 is playing in a Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup and match at Michael A. Carroll Stadium. So I'll be out there for that. And then, Pacers are in the playoffs, but clearly I'm the Cavs guy. And we locked up that number 1 seed like in February. So that was good. And we're rolling, man. Ready to talk soccer, ready to talk with whatever. Hopefully no tariffs or whatever else we were going to talk about last week. And we'll just go from there. How are you guys? How are you, Nate?
I'm hanging in there. I mean, to your point, yep, 2-1 Indiana over Michigan. I am a Michigan fan. I like comfortable clothing. I also like hand-me-downs, John. If I can save money on any sort of anything to cover my body or put in my stomach, I'll do it. I mean, the amount of leftovers I've had to string together, just where we are in the economy and in the world is good. So someone offered me this comfortable sweatshirt and said, yeah, sure. I like it. No problem. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But, I got another Northwestern sweatshirt floating around somewhere. I just like the color purple. That's really all it is. The logo on it is fine. It's just, that's one of my things. But I'm doing good. Baseball is back, so we're going to have a whole week of that. The minor league team back in town. But you're right. Yeah, U.S. Open Cup wrapping up as well. And, I know you mentioned playoffs. The Pistons are back in it for the first time in what feels like forever. So once we're done with the Knicks, we'll be on to you guys eventually. So looking forward to all that. So,
bold statement.
Just a little friendly smack talk.
I do want to say this really quickly. We pay Nathan very well here at the National Soccer Network. So the fact that he goes cheap has nothing to do with us.
After that comment, it's both you and the Pistons that pay Nate very well to be on this show. Holy Moses.
One walking PR machine.
We send him a Keurig. We send him the coffee fillers and everything. I don't know why he's drinking shitty coffee. I couldn't tell you why. Peter's already
hand-me-downs, ramen noodles. It's the whole thing. Peanut butter.
Oh.
Peter, what's up? Happy Taco Tuesday, brother.
It is Taco Tuesday. Trader, he calls. I'm assuming this because you're wearing the Purdue shirt and Goodwill question mark. So yeah, I mean, hey, Goodwill is all.
It's a Goodwill fine.
Yeah, I mean,
$5.
Tim Hortons is not bad coffee. I completely disagree with you on that, by the way. But I've already said this. If Tim Hortons wants to sponsor our show, I'll happily accept that offer. I will drink it in a Tim Hortons cup, but it will not be Tim Hortons. I'm going to say that right now. But with that being said, it is Tuesday. There's a lot of soccer on the horizon. It's Easter Sunday coming up here on Sunday. But big news here today in Turner family land. My daughter, Brianna, you know her well. She's very smart, smarter than I'll ever be. And she was invited into the National Honor Society, which is pretty impressive. Don't know what that really means. But
that's exactly what you said. She's smarter than you.
Natale coming in with a good one. Wait, the coffee firm says Tim Ho is good coffee. Really? You're calling yourself the coffee firm, and you're gonna say that Tim Hortons is good coffee?
Canadians make some good coffee, man.
Is that what everybody calls her? Timmy Ho?
Yeah,
Timmy Hose.
maybe. I don't know.
That doesn't really help the
and-
cause of being considered good coffee, does it?
I'm gonna say yup. I
That was flattering.
okay. So if it's good, what is great? I want to know. I guess we need to, and then what is shit?
Fair.
What I want to
That's
know.
fair.
No, I need to know
The coffee
what-
firm needs to explain the levels of coffee.
Yes, because you're going to say that Tim Hortons is good. Okay, all right. So then, what is great? All right, and what is shitty? Right. So I'd like to know that. But anyways, so yeah, daughter accepted in the National Honor Society, which is fantastic.
Congratulations.
That's really, really cool. And Nathan is playing, running, participating in track and field today, his first ever meet. So I don't know how what you say. You're not playing track and field, right? You're
running track.
You're
Running track. Unless he's like throwing the thing or
no,
doing other
he's
stuff.
doing high jump. He's doing the high jump.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
boys,
He's
shit
launching
coffee
himself
equals-
in the air.
So,
coffee equals-
John, I need to ask you. So, track and field amazes me because it's every sport that I wonder at what point does an athlete wake up and say, I really want to go outside and grab a very long 17-foot pole and try to jump over another 17-foot pole and then land on my back. Or I want to try to jump over a bar using my back in this weird fish out of water formation. Like, when does that happen?
It's probably the same process for, hey, I want to go dive into a pool and swim back and forth for 10 laps. It's like the same mindset to me. I understand the purpose of running. Cross country running makes a ton of sense to me. It does. You get to go out and see the world, and while as much as I don't like running, there was always a method for it. It was for me to get in shape for something else. Running around in a circle and smelling that nasty track smell, I still picture like the vomit and the smell of the track during tryouts when I was in high school. I can still picture it in my mind, and the smell, it's still there. I have not been able to get rid of it ever. And so the fact that anyone wants to run around a track in a circle, for 400 meters or whatever the hell, a quarter mile, a half mile, whatever those are, to me is you have a special place in my heart.
I'm just starting to think Nathan's just a certified maniac, man, because first of all, he plays football and he plays in a position where he gets hit every single play. So clearly
Center?
he enjoys that. He's on the line, isn't he, JT?
No, they moved him out wide. He's
okay.
He's a corner.
Okay.
but,
All right. So he gets
yeah.
hit sometimes, but still, I mean, you got to have a screw loose to want to play football. But
the Turner family's really starting to, something's going on here. I need to
my son spends most of his time like this though with his hair. Like it's like I want
that helmet hair will get you.
he like all day.
So he was a lineman before.
No. My
No.
son weighs like 80 pounds. Like
Okay, so that's what
wanted.
threw me. Nate's like, he's on the line, isn't he? And he said,
I
no,
thought
they
he
moved him outside the
was.
corner. I'm like, what is this kid? 6'6", 295, and he's playing a slot back?
No,
How does
my
that
son's gonna be entering his first year of high school next year, and he played football for the first time as an 8th grader. I'm not gonna lie, it was very it's a tumultuous situation for me. I don't want him playing football at all. He obviously wants to play football, and it's not because I don't think my kid can play at it. It's so dangerous. It's like, and my kid has no idea how to play, so it's like you're taking it's like, here you go, go try to play football when you have. I mean, I want my kids to watch football with me on Saturday and Sundays. They don't do that, so I would imagine your diehard high school football player is like engulfed in watching football like all the time. I mean, like my son's upstairs playing Fortnite or with the headset. Meta, he's doing that 90% of the time. So I'm just waiting for this whole thing to come crashing down. And I love my son to death. But when he gets out there and he sees 265-pound running back coming at him, there goes Nathan.
Go low.
But,
go low.
problematic. Yep.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
low.
By the way, just the coffee firm did say shit coffee equals instant in a mason jar, by the way. So are you drinking instant in a mason jar today there, Nathan Winger?
Yep, but it gets you by. Like I said, it comes with a fist. There it is.
There it is.
That's the magical concoction right there.
It
But
looks
that's
a little.
that's
It's not black, so it looks a little brown. What is that? How it comes instant like that, or do you add anything to it?
So I go to Aldi for my shopping. Just to preface all this, right? I don't have a coffee maker. I probably should. There's a hand-me-down somewhere in my family. Someone's got something going on. But I just walked by literally a thing of instant coffee, and right next to it was, I think, the instant creamer. So I got the instant coffee and the instant creamer. So that's when I stumble downstairs in the morning, half awake, and I just hot water and just mix up both of them and take a swig. And like I said, it hits me with it's like an overhand right to the schnoz every morning.
Can you put it back up again? It looks like it's like that red
Get ready.
sand water.
It's like a kick in the
looks
face.
Like, that's it, Nate. I'm sending you a MMF coffee.
See, now I'm gonna get free stuff out of it. This is how it goes.
Does
You show up
anybody
looking
remember
like a
that
ragamuffin.
Does anybody remember that scene in Austin Powers 2? The Spy Who Shagged Me, when they're in the lab and the fat bastard's stool sample is on the thing.
Yeah.
That's what that looked like.
Pet bastards. I just, it's funny. It's funny. Nate, I'm sending you an MF coffee. I mean, hey,
I might get a mug out of it. I might get some custom coffee stuff now. You know,
that.
Got a bag.
If you're watching this show, and if Nathan is going to put his address, and his social security number in the comments,
my phone number, all of it.
Oh man. So. All right. Well, we've talked enough about coffee this morning. Got to give it our morning coffee and conversation.
Well, we started off with shower curtains last week, so we're on a roll now.
Well, hey, I mean, you know, my life is a big part of what we do. But hey, yesterday we talked about this a little bit on the show. We talked about this "My Game, My Story" thing, and again, it kind of came from Bianca and her idea that we wanted to get players to get us information, right? And I think it's a great idea. And the way you can tell this story is like I did this morning. I went onto the website and we'll kind of start to share that process. But you know, sharing your story about your love for the game, right? And whether you're a player, you're a referee, you're a coach. Now, granted, right now we have it set up for players, but we will be introducing it to coaches and referees as well, because you know there's this. We all have a story, and this morning I went and I filled out my story on the platform, and it was fun. It was kind of fun, kind of reminiscing, and it forced me to have to go down the path to kind of find like myself when I was younger. And I want to put on the screen now that picture of me young. Now this is me today, and this is a picture of me when I was in high school. So take a look. So that little guy over there on the right. All right, there I am right there. That's my younger self right there. And obviously there's that is a picture of me here today. So I mean,
you're a lot taller now.
Well, I could not find one of me standing up. So, but yeah, and it kind of got me. And by the way, that's actually the logo that we came up with for My Game, My Story. It's actually right there in the middle there. Thought that would be kind of a cool thing. We just call it, part of Project NSN, and so you get to tell your story, and be a part of this. And if you do tell your story, the cool thing about it is on our website, and I'll pull this up because I want you guys to all see it as soon as I find the right link here, somewhere around here. But you'll live on our website. This whole thing will be on our platform, and so this here is the merch. We've created some merch. Why not, right? You got to find a way to get some merch in here. But and again, it's going to be ultimately an area where it'd be much more easier to find it. But right now, because we've been testing it, it's making its way down here under My Game, My Story. So you'll click here and it'll take you to where My Game, My Story. And right there is where you will have, your picture and then your story. will be available for people to look at all around the world, right? So around the United States. So you'll have that here on our website. So I wanted to kind of talk with that a little bit about that this morning. But we also had something else that was cool here to our website yesterday, and it's right here. We officially have a group message board on our website. So you can get involved in the chat, be on the website, start to have dialogue right on our website. You don't have to go anywhere other than the homepage and start the process of being involved in our chats. I think right now we have 1,800 website members that are currently involved in that some way, shape, or form. So they can start that process and become part of our group chat. So some updates on our website and what we're doing there. So yeah,
that's very cool.
So yeah, any thoughts on that other than cool there, Mr. Wangler?
No, I think it's unique. I think, in talking to, I remember talking to Dean Linke, and, it was interesting about his story was how he didn't come up with soccer. I think a lot of us can relate to that. Maybe not all of us, but I know, a significant handful of us certainly can. And he was one of them, growing up. He's also an Ohio guy. So I think it's interesting. We're all kind of Midwest folk, at least that have been on this podcast so far, with the exception of Victoria Quay, because I think she has a little bit of a unique perspective on this coming from the Los Angeles area. A little bit different out there when it comes to soccer than it might be around here, especially talking about Ohio and Michigan. But it's amazing how much I could relate to what his story was. And that's what's kind of helped me figure out, okay, I do have a spot in this, because I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of fake it until you make it in broadcasting. There's a lot of that. And sometimes you'll see it, even at the highest level, when they put Stephen A. Smith on an MMA broadcast, it's like, okay, he's a great entertainer. He might know how to talk to the camera. He might not know necessarily as much about this community or the sport. And that's what I kind of felt like coming into the soccer space, being someone that obviously grew up with football, grew up with, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, around, football and baseball and a lot of the traditional sports. I played soccer when I was really young. I think that was more just an excuse for my parents to, hey, let's get this kid to go run around with other kids. Not necessarily as much that they loved the game or that we had followed it very much at all. It was just a, hey, let's get this, let's get him to go run around and play with friends. But ever since then, I hadn't really had a whole lot of exposure or experience. I'd watched the international team, I'd watched the women's national team, but outside of that, it wasn't really much. So when I came in with you 2 years ago, you offer me this opportunity to, not only do play-by-play, but also then the content creation and then the show. And I'm sitting over here like I didn't grow up with soccer. I can't just turn it on and start talking about the Champions League or the Premier League or these high-end stuff, because I still have a lot of learning to do about the game itself before I can really dive into the nitty-gritty and the weeds on all this stuff. But I've grown more and I've learned more as I've gone along. But I can relate to Dean's story because he didn't have a high school team. I mean, he wasn't really all that involved until he started looking for internships and opportunities. And I think he said that he had a choice between either the United States rowing team or the U.S. men's national soccer team. And he's like, well, I hadn't had any experience with soccer, but there's a ball and a goal involved, so I'll go with that sport. And that's kind of how he fell in love with it. So for me, over the last couple of years, it's grown on me through the live streaming, through the podcasting and everything like that. So my story is very much there was an opportunity, there was a market, which there is a market for talent, especially in the soccer sphere. Some of the other markets in the sporting world in the United States are very saturated. It's tough to break in. But there is very much a market and a need in the game of soccer. So it started off as I'll fill that need and do the best that I can to, okay, now the game's starting to grow on me. Now I'm starting to actually really enjoy the game within the game, especially high-level soccer and live streaming it, being a part of it. So my story is kind of relatable to what we heard from Dean Linke. So it'd be nice to hop on and tell that story. And that's the biggest thing. And I know I've kind of been on top of you and everybody else at our studios about doing this, but making sure that we get people to share those stories, because the personal aspect is what's going to send us over the edge. If we can make this personal to people, that's really going to get them connected and wanting to come back for more. So I agree. I think it's a great push.
My story is, it's almost identical to Nate's in a way that, as far as playing, John, and I'm sure I know that you've played a lot longer than either myself or Nate had, and at more higher levels and everything like that, because you're cut for it. That's your gig. For myself, when we first got to Berea, Ohio, it was mini soccer. We were running around, and then a butterfly would pop up out of the grass, and then we'd chase that instead of the ball. So we didn't know what we were doing. But
Right.
When I talk about my fandom with Cleveland, with the Indians/Guardians, the Browns, the Cavs, and everything, we had the Cleveland Force of the old MPSL. And there was no more exciting atmosphere of indoor soccer in the entire city of Cleveland than there was for those games. They come out to the Imperial Death March, and there's fog everywhere. And, Kai Hoskevy, PJ Johns, Denzel Valentine, and then they moved over to the Crunch when they went downtown with the Cavs with Hector Marinero, Zorn Karic, Otto Orff. I mean, it's the fact that I remember those names for indoor soccer and how much that league it was so exciting. It was so fun. And I was like, man, that's so fast. I mean, it was indoor. It was hockey. It was hockey with a ball. And so I gravitated towards that, ended up playing in high school. Lost 50 pounds from my freshman to sophomore year because someone motivated me to say, you can't do that, because I was a baseball player, first baseman. So I was big, but that brought me over to soccer, lost 50 pounds. It was the most fun I had playing sports between the three that I did in high school. And then that just carried over, just getting into the media side of it, just following it, see how expansive it was. And then when I found out about international soccer, which I vaguely knew about, I knew it existed, I knew it was the world sport, but I never looked into it. And just to see the talent and the abilities and the finances and everything that those international teams have, and then in the past 10 years to see how exponentially it's grown here in the States, has just been something to where I can say, yeah, I love the game when I was 7 years old and I saw my first Force game, and here we are today. And you have something like this, Jonathan, where you're given that platform, not just to the players on the pitch or the coaches or anything like that. You're just given a platform to people who love the game that don't really have a lot of places to go to it. So that's commendable to you and what Bianca's doing and your whole family. But I think that's what keeps me engaged, is to see that growth. It's one thing where you get involved in something, it flails out, and it's the trendy thing. Like Pokemon, it was here, it went away. The virtual pets, it was here, it went away. But soccer and its growth and everything, and what you're doing to keep expanding that with a platform like this, is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's about connecting, right? And Nathan, you talked about it, in regards to trying to put us over the top, right? As much as it is about us putting us over a top or getting us to a higher level of exposure. When we started this mission of what we're doing, which 3-4 years ago now, it was about elevating the game, right? And how do you do that? Well, you do that in the coverage that we provide, right? With the streaming and all that, the news stories. We do that with anything that we do around the game, but at the same time, allowing a player or anyone for that matter who's involved in the game, allowing them the ability to be able to share from their vantage point what it's like for them in the game. And that's how we do that, right? So, again, I mean, we're always going to be trying to find ways to connect with players and connect with the fans and the teams and the coaches and all the people involved in this game. And we obviously we're starting with something like this, and maybe it'll evolve into something else. I can't obviously foreshadow the entire future, but this is a great start. And we've made it very simple and easy. I've actually posted the link here in our chat. It'll be widely available on our website here starting later this week. And we'll start promoting it. And yeah, I mean, and then at the end of it, you can get yourself a nice t-shirt that says "My Game, My Story" on it, Project NSN. So why not, right? We'll have to get everybody. But yeah, so it's a really cool thing. But I want to segue into something else. And I think that's obviously, and when I say segue into something else, I don't mean that in a literal term, even though I was on a segue here just about 12 days ago. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do? I'm gonna. My wife, she makes fun of me, and my best friend, because we have these pictures of us on Segways, and I'm gonna share them with you guys real quick. This is from literally This is literally me and my best friend Jason here. We're on our Segways.
Those things can fly too, man.
That's not you. That's a scene from Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Yeah, there you go. Good pull.
Come on, can't
Good
trick us.
pull.
But
JP,
I'm
can you pull the
gonna-
juke moves on it?
That's
That's the important question.
Yeah, I got. So this is.
You all smiley too. I'm not used to seeing you
Oh,
all
it's-
smiley and bright and
Really?
ready to roll. That looks like a
Oh,
that looks like that's a touristy photo right there.
Oh yeah. Look at this.
Yes, I'm
Look at-
telling you, man.
No,
Those things fly.
one hand looking
Nope.
back at the camera, not even looking at the rope. My goodness, seasoned vet.
But yeah.
Jonathan
No. So
Turner's been
anyways,
placed on the 60-day injured list. We need
Yeah,
someone to
right,
John. You're the host now.
we're gonna segue this in. We're gonna segue into talking about U.S. Open Cup, right? You just mentioned it here, kind of in the open, John, in regards to Indy 11 tomorrow night. But you know, the cool thing about U.S. and we've talked about this too, Nathan, is the cool thing about U.S. Open Cup is really if once you're in, I mean, anyone has a statistical chance, right? That's the cool thing about it, right? If you think about all the tournaments out there in the world, right? Non-professional environments, right? When we say like your normal tournaments, I mean, you go to like the typical youth tournament, right? You have your round robin play. You know, you play 3 games. If you win, you get top of your group. You may go into a semifinal, into a final, maybe go right to a final, depending on how it works. In this environment, you have like so many different levels and caliber of teams that participate in this event, right? You've got USL League 2 teams, USL Championship, League 1, MLS, right? You can take the MLS out of it for a second. Then you've got, UPSL, Midwest Premier League teams. You've got teams in the NPSL. Every different league is in this. And again, yes, we say statistical chance. Right? Everybody has a chance because if you're in it, you have a chance to go on and crazier things have happened. But realistically, does a non-MLS team have a chance of winning this thing?
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
And the only reason I say that is because, for example, what the Indy 11 did last year, for the first time in their franchise history, got to the semifinal of the U.S. Open Cup by beating Atlanta United. And that they had been 0-3 against MLS teams prior to that. But in tournament play, John, you mentioned how many different leagues and how many different calibers of levels of soccer there are. But look at it like the NCAA tournament, like a team like Oakland last year, how they did so well because there was that one standout player that was able to take over from a team that had, 5 genuine D1 starters, but Oakland had that one kid and just went ballistic. And just other upsets that you can think about. And the Indy 11, Atlanta United's like, oh, it's a USL championship team that we're going to play down to them. And they lost. So the likelihood, that an MLS team should win, yes. Does a USL championship team, or if there is a stacked UPSL team, some of those teams, players have to pay. Others, they get paid. So there might be players coming in from all over where they're recruiting from the whole region to come in there. I doubt a UPSL team could win it, but you mentioned USL 2, USL 1. I definitely think there could very well easily be an upset at some point.
You look there.
It's one of those things. It's one of those things. Very quickly, John, to kind of reference, and that's a good drop from Michael. 1999, the Rochester Rhinos won it. That's another good example. I'll add this in because John made reference to March Madness in that tournament. Generally speaking, the ones are going to win the thing. Okay, the ones, generally speaking, are the ones to go on, or the top seeds, right? 1s or 2s. Generally speaking, they're going to be the ones that win it all. But if you're asking if there's a chance, yes, of course, there's always a chance, and there's always
a realistic chance. So I'm not trying to be like semantic about
yes
this.
And no. Yes and no, but
someone comes out of this and wins,
right? Right. Yes, but if you're looking for complete parity where, it's a wide open field and anybody, no. I mean, obviously there's going to be teams that are a little bit better because you're playing against professionals who are again actually pulling in money. So there's that thing. Is it a guarantee that no? But what makes it so romantic, and it's the reason why we love it, and it's the reason why we've talked about it so much, is because there are those teams from those sides. You think about someone like El Farolito, like and how far they've come into this thing. I mean, they're a ragtag bunch, and they're into round 3. They have an opportunity to make it further than they've ever made it. And there's a handful of other teams that are just like that. So, the whole point of, and you and I mentioned it, and we talked about it in length. The MLS thinking, why would they send the best of the best to participate in this, or they're thinking about pulling out of it. I think this is the greatest thing that we have going in American soccer right now. I truly do. I think this tournament itself is the best thing that we have going. So I wouldn't, is it a good chance? Probably not, but it's a chance, and that's what people love about
it. So you're telling me there's a chance? You're telling me there's a chance?
So Jonathan, I want to ask you, because you seem with that last comment to Nate that you're like, it's MLS or bust. So is that your thinking about it? Is that once you get down to those final few matches and the quarterfinals and the semis and everything like that, that it's MLS versus MLS in the championship match?
No, I mean, here I'm a believer, and it's no different than when we were talking about U.S. men's national team, right? There are certain games where you look at the men's national team and say, on paper and on every outlook, it's a win. Now, does it mean it ends up being a win? No, it doesn't. Okay. I can tell you this right now, that as a former high school coach, that I knew that I was playing up against teams that were better than me, that if we were to win that game, a lot of things would have to go wrong for them and a lot of things would have to go right for us. And with Oakland University last year, the thing that you had talked about, we talked about this. Kentucky played like shit last week. They played terrible. Had they played their normal style of game, they wouldn't have lost that game, regardless of what Golke did. And Golke had a great night, right? But they didn't play well enough to win the game. And I always say this, when you're talking about the mid-major world of athletics, and you're talking about playing against, the Power 5 schools, those Power 5 schools should be beating the mid-majors every single time. And I'm not saying that because players aren't good and high quality at the mid-majors, but there's a reason why everyone wants to go to a Power 5 school, because they're supposed to be the best, right? Not everyone gets a chance to go to a Power 5 school, right? Some go to mid-majors. And again, how many times do we see mid-majors beating Power 5 schools on a regular basis? It doesn't happen. It happens, not as much as you want it to happen. And when it does happen, it becomes a really big deal. So on paper, professional teams should be beating amateur teams, right? We know that. Now, there are going to be scenarios where that doesn't happen, and those are on the rarer side of things. But I come from this perspective that if you are considered to be the better team, you should go out and win that game. Now, that comes down to a number of factors. The MLS does not take this cup seriously. I've already said that before. They don't take it seriously. Why don't they take it seriously? Because if they took it seriously, they'd have their starters out there for the entire game, or they play it like a real game. But they don't. They put in a bunch of backups and backup goalkeepers. As a matter of fact, USL Championships do the exact same thing. We're not seeing the same starters in USL Championship land that you would see in a typical league game. Why? Because the teams have made the decision that the league games are way more important, right? So, we know that. So we're not seeing the best players in a USL Championship environment playing in these games in the U.S. Open Cup. And to be fair, that's a problem for me. I don't like that, because you and I both know that the team who's the amateur team, these UPSL teams, the NPSL teams, whatever. And obviously we know, if we look at, for example, I think it's El Farolito. Like El Farolito, they are, I'm saying who they play tomorrow. Do they play tomorrow? Yes, they play Sacramento. They're in the NPSL. So they play Sacramento Republic. You better believe that they will do everything in their power to have their best team on that field, El Farolito. But will Sacramento Republic do the same thing? They won't. They will not field the best team. I have a problem with that. I really do. And I understand the semantics. I understand what's at stake, right? You get players hurt in that game, and then your league can be screwed. I understand it, but you're talking about the longest, most storied tournament in the history of this country, and teams aren't taking it seriously. So if El Fiorito would have win this whole thing against a bunch of backups, yeah, they still won. But does that mean it? I feel like it loses its luster then, as a purist in this game. And maybe I'm off my rocker. Maybe I'm saying it. Maybe this isn't the right way to put it. But I feel like they're not taking it seriously. And Indy 11 is Indy 11 going to put its best team out there tomorrow? The same team they play in throughout the USL Championship. Are they putting the same team out there tomorrow?
So it's ironic that you say that, because who they're playing tomorrow is also a conference foe, Miami FC. And so from what I've heard, just the rumblings inside the office and everything like that, is that we're treating this not as a U.S. Open Cup game. We're treating this as a league matchup game, because we may see these guys later down the line in the playoffs. So, yes, now, when they played Atlanta last year, it's exactly what you said. Indy 11 did put their best 11 on the pitch to start and finish that game. Atlanta did not. But based on that, John, and I'd like to get Nathan's opinion too, is, Jonathan, where do you think I'll give you a couple examples. So AAA baseball to Major League, the G League to the NBA, and USL Championship to the MLS. Which is the biggest separation? Or which one is closest to talent-wise?
I don't know if you mentioned AHL and NHL. I'd probably say
okay. You can throw it, because we have the Indy Fuel here, and they're the AHL of the Blackhawks, so we can run with that too.
Probably say them or G League. Two-way contracts in that league too, but probably one of those two. Just off the top of my head.
So, Jonathan, so on the soccer standpoint, how do you think that gap is between the USL Championship and MLS?
Significant.
Significant? Okay.
Significant. Yeah, because I don't know how many players are leaving championship every year and going to the MLS. To be fair, I think most of your star players aren't even making it into the championship. They're going to go right to the MLS, right? So, and they might make their way to MLS, next pro team, right? Which that would be, right? We talk about this. I don't know. I mean, again, USL Championship is probably and MLS Next Pro are probably the closest to the MLS in that regard. I just think it's still significant. It's a significant gap. We just talked about this in regards to the USL, the Super, this new league, this Division I league that they're creating with pro relegation, right? Again, if you're a player who's playing at the highest level in this country right now, you're playing maybe in MLS Next, again, because we still talk about this, MLS Next Academies. I just had this conversation with Ryan Gagnon. His son used to play with ECNL Nationals at the youth level. He's now playing for the Michigan Wolves at the MLS Next level, right? And he says, John, he goes, the competition we play against each and every game is significantly better than that we played in the ECNL. And he's like, and the ECNL is great. It's like, and the Nationals were great. He's like, but the competition is significantly better, And so, okay, so why is that? Because the best players in the country are going into those programs, which they know are feeders into the MLS Next Pro and MLS. That's why they're there. The ECNL is like another option, and it's a great option. But the best players are not finding their way there. So the gap in talent between those, again, and I always talk about this, and at least I look at it from this perspective, okay, is we talk about comparing World Cup teams. Right? Who would start for the U.S. men's national team on Argentina? Right? Maybe Christian Pulisic. Maybe. Right? Maybe. Because you think about Argentina at the bottom. Who would have to step off, and who is he better than? Right? All right. So take an MLS team and say, okay, well, of the USL Championship, which player from a USL Championship currently on Indy 11 could go play on Inter Miami? And that's how you know. That's how you know. Because if you can't answer that question with, oh, yeah, so-and-so, would be on that team at the 8, that's how you know. Okay, being 12, 13, 14 on an MLS team, 18, 19, where does that put you on a USL championship? You're probably the number one player on that team, right? Give or take. If you're 13 or 14 on the USL on the depth chart of an MLS team, you're probably number one in your USL championship team. But your number one on your USL championship team is number 15 or 16 on your roster. So that's the difference, right? And until that gap changes, it'll be a significant gap. Baseball is different too, I believe, because, and I say this, it's different, and maybe Nathan, because you're more involved in the minor league aspect of this, and knowing this, the hierarchy of how everything works. Baseball's a long ass season. You're talking about 160 some games, right? I mean, the wear and tear in baseball can be significant, especially if you're an infielder, right? You're the wear and tear. So getting players, who can be consistent and hitting a 250 average. If you're hitting 250 in minors and hitting, 7, 8, 9, 10 home runs a season, you're going to give yourself a chance to get there. You're going to, because 250 is a good batting average. I don't care what level. 250 is a solid average. You want to be in that 280s, 290s, but you're going to get a chance. You're probably going to get a chance. I don't see a player who's getting, averaging 20 minutes a game in Indy 11, who's scoring a couple goals a season. I don't know if they're going to be getting the nod to go to the MLS. I mean, like I don't see it going that way. But again, I could be off my rocker. They say I have been.
Jonathan, can you expand on that with the Messi experiment when you say the gap between USL Championship and MLS versus what Premier League is to the MLS? Because Messi came over to Inter basically because he was on the downside of his career, one of the greatest soccer players of all time, no matter how you look at it. But he was steadily, gradually going for faster, younger, smarter players over there, comes over here, and he was like averaging 2.4 goals a game when he was healthy. And he was doing that consistently in the MLS. Is that the kind of difference you're talking about, where one player significantly came over from a league up top and then came down and literally I think he played 11, 12 matches and put himself in every scoring statistically category high because he played the minimum amount of matches? Would you consider it like that?
I would, but I think that when we talk about the MLS, when we know the MLS is where it should be, players aren't going to come here on the downturn; they're going to come here on the upturn, right? And that's the significant difference between us and the EPL and other leagues around the world, right? Is because this is a place people want to come to retire. They don't want to come here to start their careers, right? And that's a huge difference maker in this whole thing as well. There's a significant gap between the best teams in the MLS and the teams at the bottom of the MLS. There's a gap there as well. And that might be when we say significant, it may not be as significant of a gap as it is between MLS team and USL championship team, right? But we also compare this too. Like if we talk about the Detroit Lions for playing Alabama, we had these conversations a lot back in the day, right? Where, if Alabama and the Lions played each other, what would happen? Well, the Lions would just kill them. It wouldn't even be close, right? We talk about that. And why is that? Because the talent on that NFL team is the best player of every team in the country on the Lions. And so it's completely different. And again, the way the game is played is completely different. The mindset, the speed, all of that is different at that level. Same thing is true in the MLS. Now, 3 or 4 years from now, when this new league is formed, we'll have to kind of tell and see how that works. The biggest challenge too, I think, which is important, is not so much in the USL Championship, is we talk about the player makeup in this country, right? Think about the player. The player who's playing in these amateur teams, in El Farolito, for example, has a day job, right? They're working, right? A lot of your USL Championship players might even have jobs because there's not a ton of money in those worlds. I mean, Nate Steinwasser I think is an accountant, right? He just retired from playing. He was a longtime Detroit City FC goalkeeper, very successful, but he was like an accountant by day, right? And I don't know what the league minimums are, but they're not making a ton of money in that league. Maybe $40,000 or $50,000. They're not making a shit ton of money in those leagues. I'm saying the average, right? It might be a little bit higher now than it was a couple of years ago, but it wasn't a ton of money. I mean, you can't really live off 50 grand as a soccer player. That's not a ton of money, right? So the money is a big factor in all this, but these teams aren't paying these players a ton. Like in the NWSL, these girls are all living in the same place and they're all having to get like jobs at coffee shop and baristas to pay the bills, right? I mean, so at the lower levels, the difference is they don't have the money. If you think about this from the standpoint of I'm hungry, I want to keep going, I'll find a way. I will find a way. But there's this mindset that they have to go keep working. They have to get a job. They have to find a way to keep paying their bills. That adds a whole level, another weight of stress that is going to hinder your growth to a lot of players, and also will help them. I think the ones that have that willpower, let me see past that. But that can hurt you. But to answer your question and be as direct as I can, significant gap in talent. Significant gap in talent, significant gap in the ability to understand the game, the way it's played, significant gap in training, significant gap in money. All those factors are a core reason as to why the MLS is here and everybody else is in a distant second.
Nathan, I want to ask you, because Jonathan brought up a point about Pulisic and Argentina. And Nathan, I want to get your thoughts with the World Cup coming up and USMNT starting their trek for that. But a thing that when the Summer Olympics always rolls around is everybody wants to get excited about USA basketball. You think of the Dream Team, you think of the Redeem Team, and taking the best players from the United States and putting up against the rest of the world. And in hindsight, it should be a blowout, like it was in 92, like it was in 2012. But with USMNT, and you think about soccer here and how it should be a dominant sport, but it's not the sport of choice. And you look at your powerhouses, Italy, France, England, Argentina, Brazil, countries that are an eighth of the size of the United States. Do you think that, like, what I basically just want to get your thoughts on that. How does it make you feel about the current state of soccer in the United States when you have 330 million plus people that can get involved in the sport that just get drilled by France, who has what, 3 to 4, I mean, maybe 10 million, something like that. I don't know exactly what it is, but maybe the size smaller than the state of Texas. I know that size wise. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, think about it in basketball terms. And I know it's hard to compare cross sports. The U.S. has been the standard in the sport of basketball for how long? I mean, really since the fall of the Soviet Union. I mean, I realize, Yugoslavia, they had some really good teams, that used to be Serbia and that whole area. France has always had some good individual players, but the standard has been the United States for forever, and only now are we really getting to a point to where we look at, okay, Canada is getting there. France is probably going to be the team to beat in the next Olympics. Spain has always had a really good program. Australia continues to produce players, so we've always been the standard, but the reason why other countries are catching up is because they've kind of taken a page out of our playbook. But the other thing is they play their way. And that's the thing, is they've created this era of popularity within these small communities to where, and it was funny because Bogdan Bogdanovic actually talked about this during the documentary they did around the last Olympics. It was, I forget what the name of the documentary, but they followed Team USA, Team France, Team Serbia, Team Canada. I mean, they were in the locker rooms and everything, but he talked about how, obviously Serbia has gone through some economic struggles. I mean, there have been some times where people are starving, in the streets because they just, for one reason or another, with the shift of political allegiances and, the Soviet Union, and they've had to go through a lot. Basketball was always the escape. Basketball was always something that the community would just rally around. And there was just kind of like this feeling of just like, we're all together. Like sports in a lot of ways, and JT, we've talked about this, was an escape. And for that team and for that country, basketball was something they could all rally around. They could all feel great about. And that's what developed really them from being what they were to now. I mean, they were this close to knocking the U.S. out of the semifinal round and going on to the gold medal match. I mean, if the U.S. doesn't go on that unbelievable run in the fourth quarter, they don't get there. And so that's crazy to think we're in a position now to where we're struggling against Serbia. I mean, the greatest player in the world comes from Serbia, but it all started with the growth from a grassroots perspective in the Serbian country. You know, there always might have been a little bit of a culture there, but it's built off of what they've done within their communities and at the lowest levels. And I think to try and tie this into what we're talking about, yeah, realistically, is Alfaro Lido going to go on and win the U.S. Open Cup? No, probably not. Are a lot of these USL sides going to go on to win the cup? Probably not. I mean, they might get there, but who knows? But what this does do, and this is why I find the importance of it, even if they don't necessarily have a chance, and even if the MLS is like, not interested, don't like the prize money, don't want to get our guys hurt, this, that, or the other thing, the important part of this to me is, number one, it's the USL growing popularity with their teams. When we see 12,000 people showing up to a game in Chattanooga, that's a great sign to me. So we're creating these exciting matchups within these communities, but it's also inspiring to see what you were talking about, JT, how sometimes some of these players for these teams are working day jobs, but they're also playing this professional sport. Like, there's a part in all of us that I feel like can kind of relate to that and want to see those players go on to succeed. So the more we can create these exciting matchups within these communities, and I think the U.S. Open Cup does a great job of that, that's how we're going to continue to cut down and be able to catch up to the rest of these countries, is if we create this draw and this momentum in these communities. Because the closed structure for the MLS, I think, it really hasn't done them any favors. And it's the reason why everyone's so excited about Pro Rel with the USL. Now, there's the logistics side. I get it. There's the money side. That's awesome. But that alone gets people to understand and really get excited to go, wow, okay, so we could start a club tomorrow and eventually find ourselves at the top level. Like, it seems like a more pure way of playing the game. I don't know how this all affects the U.S. men's national team. I think there's a lot of layers to that. I think there has to be more of a sense of pride. I think more guys have to care, to be honest with you, John, because I think we have a collection of very talented individualists, you know, and at any sport, any level, like the old saying, 5 stars will get you beat, is so true. It is so true, because you put a lot of prima donnas all in the same room and they don't have some sort of common link or common goal or common drive. It's just not going to happen. And I think we used to see that with the U.S. men's national team. And look at the early 2000s. Look at what they did, you know, in the mid 2000s with Clint Dempsey and, you know, also the Tim Donovan Landon Donovan and Tim Howard days. Like, they had that. So now I think it's a lot of getting back to that, because we have so many specialized individual athletes that American draw, that it's us against the world just isn't there. I think that's the issue, at least at the top level.
You know, and as someone who loves the game of soccer, I want nothing more than for teams to come out of nowhere and rise, right? I want nothing more than that. But if that is the goal, you know, if you're getting into this with the chance, like, we're going to start off with this here and then, you know, first off, any team going into USL League 2 has to do a buy-in of like $75,000. Like, that's just to enter the league. And then to operate the league. I mean, again, I know the money thing is a huge drawback, because most of these teams are going to lose money every single year. It's not, I mean, again, we talk about how much money these teams are losing as it is. They're not making money. And they're okay with that, because it's still a huge product that drives a ton of exposure. So these teams are okay with that. And we can talk about pro relegation until whatever. And I know that that's a big selling point. To be fair, it's a talking point. It was created so that people could talk about it, and all the pundits could be, oh my God, Pro Rel, and all the fans around the country are going to get so excited about this Pro Rel shit. That's what it's all about. To be fair, I almost feel like it's clickbait. I almost feel like they're just gaslighting us at this point. Because I keep talking about this. I'll keep talking about it until I turn blue in the face, which is, you know, could be happening as soon as possible. I have no idea. But it's not going to be successful. It just isn't.
Is the current structure successful?
What current structure?
The way the MLS is set up right now?
Well, yeah, because they have 32. I mean, it's grown exponentially over the last many years. I mean, it's bigger than it's ever been. So yeah, you can argue about that. I mean, USL Championship doesn't come close to drawing what MLS draws. Not even close. Not even the same. Not the same ballpark. You know,
Jonathan,
I mean, you know,
I want to squeeze a question into you about the going back to the U.S. Open Cup. So, is there, listening how you talk about it and kind of like in between a rock and a hard place of what you want to root for, but what you want to see and what you're going to see, is there a happy outcome for you for the champion of the U.S. Open Cup? Like if a certain MLS team wins it, or if another team wins it, or all those factors that you mentioned with the watering down of rosters and not putting the best product on the pitch and doing all these different things. Is there an end result where you're like, okay, I can appreciate that?
yeah, I think that the U.S. Open Cup has to say, if you're not going to field your best teams, don't play. That's what I think. If you're not going to field your best teams, we don't want you in the tournament. And to be fair, if that means the MLS isn't part of it, then so be it. I don't think El Farolito will give a shit, or USL League One team, whatever, would give a shit if they're not playing an MLS team in the final. I don't think they care, because you still have to win like 7-8 games to get there. It doesn't matter to them, right? Go. So if you said MLS, whatever, no longer in it. USL Championship, if you're not going to put your best team out there, then don't join it. And to be fair, if I'm the MLS, what I would just want to play one game. So my thought process is you take the U.S. Open Cup winner, and they get to play in the All-Star game against the MLS. There you go. Right? We bring all these EPL teams over for shits and giggles. Make the U.S. Open Cup winner play in the MLS, the All-Star game. That, whatever you want to call that thing, that they do, right? Make that. You know, so now you don't put any of your teams out there to get hurt at all. You just go, okay, and then they play the All-Stars. Yeah, would it get a whopping? Well, who cares? It's an All-Star game. Why does it even matter what the score is? So, you know, I mean, maybe that's what you do. Again, if you're not gonna field your, and the teams at the lower level, they don't care who they're playing. They want a chance to win games. But again, if you're fielding less than teams, what is it? I mean, you know, it just, to be fair, it seems disingenuous. You know, it just doesn't feel right. And I think maybe more money has to be put into play. Maybe it's you know, I don't know the solution to solving this problem, but I just think you just take those teams and say you can't play. Anyways, they're not playing anyways until like the 9th round. You know, it's not like they're having to actually go and do anything. You know, it's like they're not actually doing any. I mean, they're not trying. I mean, they're playing their normal. Then all of a sudden, like, they show up in like the 5th round. Okay, great, thanks. Like that's a part too. That's just terrible. And that was a negotiation between the U.S. Open Cup and MLS. It's like, okay, we'll just kind of let you show up. Why does USL Championship have to show up to their games? Why do they got to play in the 2nd and 3rd round when they're a professional level? Why are they given that slight? I think it's bullshit. You know, it's a great tournament. You know, and I know we have a lot of great tournaments. I know you got like President's Cup, right? We've got like U.S. Youth Soccer National Championships. We've got the U.S. Amateur Cup, right? You got all these different cups, and I know that they're all different and whatever. But the U.S. Open Cup is like the gold standard. Are we getting the gold standard? I would argue and say we are not getting it. And the only reason these teams are there is because they bring money. Let's be honest.
Don't you? But to just ask, to kind of piggyback off that, do you think that has anything to do with the fact that the MLS is a closed structure and therefore don't want to mess with the assets that they do have by putting them in a cup like that? Because there is amateurism in there. Like, they're not embracing the oldest tournament in America, the most popular soccer tournament in America, because they're scared of the money aspect. I mean, do you understand how that might frustrate people a little bit?
I can imagine it frustrates the shit out of them. But to be fair, I don't think it's looked at. I think that, like, in any scenario, we are a society that builds everything up, right? So it's like, oh my God, if you don't have an iPhone, you know, if you don't have the Gucci bag, if you don't have this, right? We are a society that builds things up and put them on a pedestal. And so the MLS is like, well, here we are. We're going to come down to this. You know, we're going to do this. You know, Sure. Right. Right.
Yeah, but if
I
they
mean,
actually embrace it, then it's not coming down to anything. That's
yeah, but
that's my whole thing.
but again, I don't think they're ever going to embrace it. Not
And
anymore.
I think therein lies the problem. Yeah, therein
Well,
lies the
yeah, and
problem in my
that's
mind.
why I'm saying if you're not going to give
Yeah.
it the what it deserves, then don't do it. Don't do it. You know, I again, it's disingenuous to the team that gives a shit. You know, I mean, it's no different than the player on your team that's a cancer. This is a cancer to the cup. It's a cancer to the cup because again, you're not fielding your best teams. And what? So all of a sudden in the final, woohoo, we're gonna bring all of our best players out. Like, oh, okay, great. Like, thank you. Woohoo! You know, if Lionel Messi's Inter Miami is playing the US Open Cup final, is Messi in that game? Is he in that game?
I'm just still hurt because you said society bases us on our things, and you said iPhone, and I only have a Galaxy.
Oh, well, I meant like iPhone or I
We're
just
fancy
meant like
now,
yeah. All I meant by that though was like it's
I'm just messing because
No,
you were
I
on
get
fire, man. There were so many S bombs that you dropped in that little span there. I was keeping tally. You had at it. I like the response there. The fire there was beautiful.
If you have to put more, at stake, that's fine. These players, it's not like I don't know if they have a choice or not. I mean, I don't know how that works at that level. I'd imagine you're dealing with a player that say, I'm not going to come to that. We're cool. Like, hey guys, who wants to play in this US Open Cup game? And everyone's putting like 5 people with their hands up. Okay, I guess we only have 5 players. Let's grab the reserves. Let's go. I don't know. I don't know how that goes. But again, if we look at this and say, okay, if you're a USL League One team, you're going to go out there and play as many of your quality players as you can to go out and beat that USL championship team because you want to beat the team that's better than you, right? I mean, that's how that would work. Does that happen? Again, I don't know. JT has soccer passion. I appreciate that, Peter. Thank you. JT, great idea. Open Cup champs play against the MLS champs. It's a good idea. I appreciate that. Is there a competition indifferent because of the raw talent or mental talent is knowledge? Is the competition different because of the raw talent? See, here lies in the problem too. We talk about this training, right? Training. Now, USL Championship, USL League One, they're training on a regular basis. But that UPSL, the NPSL, the APSL, the Midwest Premier League, all these different, they're training maybe once, twice a week. They're not training as a collective group. You know what I mean? They might have been playing together for 100 years, but there's something to be said about training 5 days a week, having a nutritionist, having someone who, a trainer who's there with you going through, weightlifting and all that. I mean, all these professional teams are doing that. They're doing that on a regular basis. Your El Farolito is probably not doing that. They're not doing that. I mean, I'm not saying, to be fair, they might be doing it on some level, but more individualistic on an individual level. They're not doing it maybe as a team. We're going to Planet Fitness and we're, that, but these teams aren't doing that, so, and that makes it harder, right? As a collective group, you're walking stride in stride. I mean, if you think about it from the standpoint of like a high school team or a college team, these teams are practicing all the time. So if they know each other, they know how each other passes, they have the instincts, it's all built into their program. And when they go up and play against a team that's like an amateur team, they're probably going to roll them because they're just in a way better position than the other team. I just when it comes to this Open Cup, it started off as this amateur cup, right? It's what it kind of this great thing, and I think it needs to stay with amateurs. I think that it needs to, and if it's not the MLS and you want to make it a USL Championship, All-Star game, or hey, the USL Open champion plays the USL Championship, champion. In a friendly, like that would be cool, because we talked about this too, Nathan, like the Super Bowl and the Pro Bowl, right? And how that the NFL Pro Bowl is a joke now, right? It's a joke. It's a straight up joke. It's flag football. I said, well, maybe what you should do is take the 2 teams who lost in the conference finals, all right, in the NFC and AFC, and they play in that game. They get a third place game instead. Do all the other extra stuff that you do for Pro Bowl week, but have the teams that lost in the NFC and AFC, have them play in a third place game that same weekend. Now it means something. And you'll sell a shit ton of tickets. People go watch that game because it means something. You do something like that, where you
Yeah.
have this structure. I know we're over, but we're having a good conversation, and I have no meetings right now, which is great, so I don't have to run anywhere. So, well, a little longer here on Inside the Game today, but I mean that if you want something to mean something, put more at stake. If it means teams who win get $10 million, great, give them $10 million. I mean, I'm telling you this right now, if every player on a team that won was going to get a $150,000 bonus check, but you had to have played in at least one of the 3 rounds. You can't just play in the final.
Right.
You'd have had to play in the previous couple of rounds. That changes the tune. I'm not going to get $150,000. I'm not going to get $1 million bonus. I'm not going to get that. Yeah, well, they will. If they want to get that money, they'll do it for sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, then why are we doing this? And the coffee from goes, I think as teams get deeper into the tournament, they will play more of their first teamers. You see this in the FA Cup. And yeah, but I would argue that the difference between teams in the FA Cup is not as significant. I mean, promotion, relegation, you've got teams who are being promoted and relegated in that league all over the place, and they are all extremely talented. I mean, the gap between League One, and the second division in EPL, the top 5-7 teams in that second division could all be in the first division. Right? I mean, I don't follow a lot of EPL, but I would argue because every year teams go up and down. So, I mean, is the USL Championship number 1 team in USL Championship? Is that team going to go into, if they were to get promoted, how would they do in the MLS?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who's currently leading the way, but where is Indy 11 right now in the championship? Are they at top of the table?
As far as the standings, well, we're only 4 matches in, but I mean, look at, if you want to go back to last year, Rhode Island was a championship, and they beat Indy 11 at home. So, I think a great point that you've brought up several times there, Jonathan, and Nate, I've heard you talk about it too, and just like baseball, but in the G League too, is with MLS teams, and you talk about EPL and all these teams, it's established players. I mean, these guys are playing with each other from match 1 to match 32 or however many they play. Whereas in AAA, if you're good, you're gone. If you're bad, you're gone. It's hard to build continuity and a chemistry as a fan to sit out there. Nate, you see this all the time with the Whitecaps. How many guys come up, just rip it up, and then within 2 weeks, they're gone. So you can't form that bond with them. But that's chemistry. And I think that has a lot to do with Indy 11. The roster from just a year, from last year to this year, I mean, there's very familiar names, yes, but there's a lot of people that are gone that made a significant impact last year that have moved on to a different team. So I think that plays a big part of it too, is that, you're talking about fielding the best players. Well, the teams that have the best players sometimes aren't keeping them because hey, I just won with Rhode Island. Now what's my next challenge? I'm not good enough to play in the MLS, so the best I can do is a lateral move. So I'll just do a change of scenery and go out and play for San Diego FC. So I think that plays a big part of it too, is just that continuity between a team to produce those best players to compete with an MLS team where maybe you don't see as much movement.
No, it's a good point, and I do think that when it comes to rosters, especially at these levels, again, I don't know the number of players leaving championship and going to the MLS. I don't know. I'd have to look at that statistic, and maybe there's one out there, but I don't think it's a high number. I don't think it's a very high number.
You made a valid point, because from what I know, based on Indy 11, just USL Championship, it's not players leaving them to go to the MLS. It's players, the third keeper, the 20th man on the roster, that I'm not playing at all for the Portland Timbers, but I know I'll start on Colorado Springs and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it works on there from what I've witnessed in the past couple of years with the 11.
And I would expect that we talked about this too, Nathan. Me and you did here a few weeks back about this Pro Rel. Is that if you have this Division 1, what's going to happen with this Division 1 is USL Championship is just going to go from what it is, and they're all going to move into into that first division, right? League One is going to move into championship, and they're going to take a whole bunch of teams from USL League Two and plop them in to League One. So all you're going to see is just all these teams just go from what they were to what they, and here. And again, if you are a player in this country and you want to play at the highest of levels, if your dream growing up was to play in the MLS. Now, granted, there's another league that's coming in. Great news. I have a chance to continue to play. But the best of the best are going to go play in the MLS. And the crumbs, the really good, solid players who would have been 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, they might still stay in the MLS because of pay. Because again, if you want to get the best player to come from the MLS and go to the USL League, whatever league we call this thing, if you want them to do that, you're going to have to pay them a lot of money, right? A lot of money. So you're going to get the same thing we see now on USL Championship and this new league. We're going to see the same thing. What is going to change? The only thing that's going to change is that now, based on what USL is saying, is that first team, that Division I team, can now, if they finish last, can now go back to where they were originally, which was in the championship. That's what's going to happen. And then, that's what's going to change. That's all that's going to happen here. So, and again, maybe 5 years from now, 6 years from now, maybe it'll be a better product, and maybe players will say, oh, yeah, I have an option. But again, you'll have the players who are leaving MLS who will go down to that other league, even though it's considered equal. They'll go over to that league and they'll end their career there. So all we're doing is we're doing what's currently happening with Lionel Messi of the world and the Beckhams, right? Oh, I'm going to go finish my career in that league. So all we've done is just created a place for the player that can't play in the MLS anymore to go play in another league and still say that they're playing professional soccer. That's all we're doing. And so I think it's going to be I just think it fragments the game way too much, and I think it's going to end up hurting the game of soccer on some level. It's my perspective. Take it for what it is. But on that note, we're going to segue into, we got to leave. It's time to call it a day. Oh, a little clapping coming in. Thank you. If you like what you're listening to or you're watching, make sure you subscribe to us, like us, share this with your friends and family, your enemies. It doesn't matter to us. We're cool either way. Again, we talked about this earlier today. I'll put it back on the screen. Share your story. My game, my story. The link is in the comments section, but share your story. Be a part of what we're doing. And let's share the story that you have with the world here on the National Soccer Network. So, and I think what we're going to start doing too is we'll probably highlight those players and try to invite them into here on a weekly basis and see if they want to be a part of this process on our show. But for Nathan Wengler and John Natale, I am Jonathan Turner. You've been watching Inside the Game here on the National Soccer Network. We appreciate you all for tuning in, especially you there, Peter. Great conversation. As always, gents, have a great day. We appreciate you. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same place, with some of us having really good coffee and some of us having really shitty coffee. But either way, we'll be back at it. See you tomorrow on the National Soccer Network. This has been a presentation of the National Soccer Network.